Today is May 1st, 2022. Welcome to Native Calgarian. Oki, Naganago, Mekoche, Che Stokom Aki, or Dekots, Nagotine, Si Ku. Hi, my name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she and her pronouns. I'm speaking to you on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed U.S.-Canadian border are the Blackfeet. North of the border are the Siksika, Gunai, and Bagani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Wesley, Chiniki, and Bearspaw nations of the Stoney Nations, and the Dene from Tsuut'ina. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Hare people, like the bunny, also called the Great Bear Lake Tribe in Treaty 11. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene Nation is a visitor to this area of Pincho Tine Indahe in Satu Dene, meaning many horse town, named after the Calgary Stampede. And actually, the way it was explained to me, it's like big dog town. So, and by that, most Indigenous cultures actually consider horses as like a big dog. So, just a little fun fact. Anyway, I was born here in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name, which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene, or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution, while having a Canadian Indian Act imposed status card, which is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit, or the LGBTQ2+ community, and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socioeconomic ladder because of policy, colonial trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit status, and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with government signing on your behalf. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as the guest and acknowledging your role as a treaty partner in a so-called time of reconciliation. It's important your land acknowledgements have meaning. I encourage all to introduce themselves with their acknowledgement of their ancestry, stories of displacement, and how you perceive your role as a treaty partner, a citizen of Canada, a refugee, or other land displacement, so that we as Indigenous peoples know how safe you are to be around. If you don't know how to pronounce your local Indigenous nation's name, won't say your story of origin, acknowledge stolen lands, or acknowledge the imposed economic oppression, or your role in reconciliation, I determine how safe you are to be around for myself, my community, my family, and as a Dene woman who attempted to run for public office after joining harmful colonial parties, spent money to be at those expensive conventions, traveled to them just to vote on incomplete drug policies that still allow incarceration, the denial of justice, denial of health services, racism, colonial violence, genocide of Indigenous and Black peoples. I have to continue to work to advocate and attempt to work within these systems that are meant to harm me and my community. So I know my community is dying from the current drug policies and the imposed Christian-based drug policies, the abstinence programming, private healthcare and justice systems built on racism, land theft, and imposed British constructs that continue the genocide on Indigenous peoples. I think of them all the time, and I want to honor their lives and their struggles. And my hope is that folks that listen to this who never hear any of this conversation on mainstream media understand this is what's happening. And these grants that people give us to be able to speak about these issues are always denied. So anyway, I honor the Blackfoot and the elders as the members have been kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot, and Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot and Dene elders and the language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. Any mistakes or misinterpretations on the wide range of things I talk about will be on me. I encourage questions so that misunderstandings can be cleared up as soon as possible. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous, just as you don't speak on behalf of all of the people in your world, but I just share my road as I walk down the red Road journey. So my Native Calgarian patron account is where you can go pledge and support. If you prefer Etransfers, you can go to nativeyyc@gmail.com. I want to say thank you to all my previous donor supporters for showing your support. Um, it's shocking to me that the money people do send. I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I wish it was enough to earn a living, and I have thought many times about monetizing this podcast in order to, just be able to do this work. But this whole capitalist corporate structure is so gross. And just when I think I might expand into that world, my Instagram gets hacked or something. So, it just seems like it seems like it's fleeting. I know it won't be. I've been doing this for 4 years now, but obviously, it's a hard decision to work within this construct that the economy is set up. Anyway, if you want to send any comments or questions, you can also go to nativeyyc@gmail.com. You can also give a review on whatever medium you're listening from, and you can go to the YouTube channel where you can go and subscribe. If you missed a podcast, you can go to nativecalgarian.com, and if you want to sign up for a book club, you can go to the same place. So I just wanted to do a quicker, well, we'll see if it's quicker. I'll do a quicker podcast today and talk about some things that have happened. First, I got some amazing support from the folks that we did that book club or the book interview last time, the Dismantle Defund group, because I tell you, they sent me a book. I did a TikTok on it. I'm no, Sherry McKay, who does these really cute like openings and such. Like I don't know, I don't feel right doing that, but I do want to acknowledge when they were kind enough to be guests on my show, kind enough to give me that book. And I'm excited to add to that conversation, because I think for folks who are afraid to defund the police, they want resources. And these are great resources. And, I've talked about another book that we did for a book club on, policing Indigenous peoples. So I just think it's really important that people understand the incredible double standard that Indigenous people face. We have 231 calls to justice, 94 calls to action, and we have yet to see substantial change in this legal system at all to acknowledge reconciliation. So my hope is people will fight for it. I had a look at one of the resources. I every so often go through the resources to make sure they're still functioning. And, one had called out the Canadian government for, petty land acknowledgements. While they were right, when talking about reconciliation, they actually didn't have a land acknowledgement on their own site. And they've never engaged with me on, that. And we're supposed to be local anti-racism groups. So, like, just to give an idea of the disconnect when it comes to this conversation about, people wanting to be good allies, but at the end of the day, it is easy to call out the Canadian government if you're non-Indigenous. But if you're non-Indigenous, which this anti-racism group is, there's no one Indigenous in their group. This is another example where you can use your privilege in a very different way, by showing by example that maybe you do need a land acknowledgement. It is meaningful. And what does that mean to you? And this particular group, I wish would, say, oh, because of the, exploitation of Chinese immigrants and the Chinese head tax and all these things that the Canadian government had did when doing a land acknowledgement. Like, I wish people seen the spin that they need to do for that. So anyway, wanted to talk a little bit about last weekend. Well, even the week before that, my daughter had contracted COVID. Really excited for her. She went to a concert for the first time with a girlfriend, no parents. So, I knew it was going to be something she'd want to do. Anyway, a few days later, sure enough, she tested positive for COVID. She did pretty good through it. She was double vaxxed and had a fever. And other than that, she seemed almost like seasonal allergies. It was her symptoms. I know they're different for everybody, but she says she's just fine now. So anyway, we had to do a bunch of canceling of like my massage, chiro, all those things, because even for me, I was testing regularly to make sure I wasn't positive, and masking and all of that. Anyway, the Friday night we tested her and she finally showed she was not positive. So that was good. So we were able to spend the money. It's so stupidly expensive, but we went and spent a ticket price for her and I to go into the Comic-Con here. So um, it's really expensive. Like I can't tell you how expensive it was. So it was $60 for one adult, and because they conveniently ran out of youth tickets, they charged me a full adult ticket for her. So $120, and hadn't even walked in the door yet. They expect you to download an app, and they expect you to utilize that, which is, I guess, good for paper, but they don't exactly provide free Wi-Fi. And my poor daughter, she's like, Mom, you have Wi-Fi. And I'm like, I know, but the point is charging, because she comes from this generation where Wi-Fi is not a big deal. But for like anyone my age or over, like, you remember you couldn't even make a 1-800 call, and it costs like, your phone bill could be like $900 if you had a family emergency, because we didn't have like a, $40 a month package across country. Anyway, I know it sounds stupid. So, I was like, I thought it was really inaccessible, was kind of more my point for folks who aren't digitally sound, right? But understandably, she was just annoyed that I was like, oh, why are you making such a big deal out of this? So anyway, I went there, and I had a look at their website, because there was something that really happened that bothered me. So William Shatner was invited again to come. And I know most Canadians are like, oh my God, William Shatner, he's such a hero and such a legend. For what? Being a white male actor in the 60s? Whatever. So I didn't used to be so cynical about him. I used to be a huge Star Trek fan, and I used to love watching it because my dad watched it religiously. So, and then I was like that next generation, and I enjoyed Star Trek quite a bit. Anyway, a few years ago, something happened. It was William Shatner. He had this huge hissy fit about Laura Ingalls award. And, we were at that time talking about how, you have these settler colonial books that everybody worships, and of course they're derogatory at worst if they have any Indigenous inclusion at all. So anyway, he made some racist tweet about no Indians, and so the Indigenous community said, hey, quit being a racist, and he just blocked us all. And that was actually one of the first times I ever made international news for a stupid tweet that I had, because like I hadn't said you're an idiot. That was still when I was really quite PC and trying to, accommodate the curl clutching liberals and conservatives who are like, wow, if you don't use the proper terminology, the proper English terminology, of course we cannot take you seriously. So, I've kind of given up on that, because I now understand tone policing a lot better. And I know, like, you can't placate to racists when they're just racist or they have an anti-Indigenous bias. Like, you just can't engage with them. They're always looking for a reason not to engage with you if they're tone policing you. So anyway, I was still PC then. It wasn't like I was like calling him a jerk or anything. And I still really have, well, I don't know, maybe I have since. But anyway, he just blocked me for acknowledging a tweet that was like, hey, this is wrong. And apparently he's done transphobic things and ableist things as well. So anyway, I was just kind of tired. Like, why is Calgary Comic-Con bringing this, privileged white male who can afford to go to space? So apparently he brought him in, and I was like, how Indigenous are these guys? So I was having a look at their website, and of course there's no land acknowledgement. And I was walking around the on the grounds, and they have vendors there selling sage, and people were like, well, did you take a picture? And I'm like, no, I didn't take a picture, because I'm just trying to enjoy my fucking day. Thanks a lot. So anyway, I'm just trying to make up the point this to my listeners. Sage shouldn't be for sale unless it's by an Indigenous vendor, 1. 2, quit bringing in these toxic males. And then 3, that bigger picture that, we all have a role to play in reconciliation. and even Comic-Con can do more for, bringing in a land acknowledgement on their damn website or something, right? Like, we all have a role. And why this matters to me is that I think there's so many people in my world that love Comic-Cons. I was lucky enough to go to Los Angeles, Texas Renaissance Festival. I went to Seattle once, and that was when John Travolta went there, actually, he had a sci-fi movie or something. Anyway, it's been something that I really love. I love fantasy, but I can't be at places that I know are problematic. And I'm kind of getting to that point where prices are so expensive to go. The incredible amount of privilege, digital privilege, there's no real Indigenous inclusion. Like, we have Jean Braverock, who was a part of the original Wonder Woman, and he's not, featured as like a guest speaker. Don't get me wrong, it was super cool. I was in the same room as John Cleese. There was this couple that actually dressed up like the coconut people from the Monty Pythons. Like, there was some really cool moments, and basically what happens if you go to these, you have to pay basically $100 to get an autograph and $100 in order to take a picture with one of these celebrities they bring in. So they brought in all 4 hobbits. All 4 of them were there. I couldn't believe at a deadline, like, look straight at Sean Austin and Elijah Wood. And I couldn't believe it. And I know the other 2 were there too. And I know they're super popular, and I'm sorry I can't remember their names offhand, but really, really cool to see them all right there. And then I had friends who paid that $100, or I'm sure it was $200 for those guys. And they had a plexiglass that was separating the 4 hobbits from whoever was getting the picture. And so you would get these pictures done with them. It was super cool to see that. But I had even one friend, apparently she's a volunteer. I don't know what her job was, but it was her job to take all 4 to like the local pub or take them to the airport or whatever. So I got to ask her about that and find out about it. So that, that was definitely a highlight. I had a friend who had a booth and I couldn't find it to save my life. But anyway, my daughters and I scoped it out on Saturday, and then Sunday we were given tickets from one of the local charities here. Will give some tickets if you're signed up with the right organizations. So we were able to get tickets for my husband, myself, and I, and we all went. But my husband has a really small threshold at being at a place that has thousands and thousands of people. So we took him to the 3 or 4 places that we knew he'd like to be. But I think his highlight was there was like these Jay and Silent Bob dudes. And it wasn't actually them. He'd seen some other main characters that I didn't watch the movie. Anyway, he was so excited that he got to see them there. I seen the Trailer Park Boys were sitting there regularly, but my personal highlight that I did pay $100 for, the autograph and the picture, was to meet Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall. So that was super cool. And news radio, and he's like a total super celebrity to me, but really nice, humble guy. I follow him regularly on Twitter. If you followed me on Twitter, you've probably seen me retweet some of his stuff. Because I'm just from that generation. I love Kids in the Hall. So anyway, I had a good time despite, wishing that when I say, we all have a role in reconciliation, whether it's a sports club or community association, whatever. Like, if you're a total nerd like I am and love going to these Comic Cons, like, why can't I ask you guys to help me and push with some Indigenous inclusion there? Because Indigenous are totally leading the way. Could you imagine if we got that director to come all the way here from New Zealand? To me, that's a pipe dream. But with more and more people, like the reservation dogs in Indian country, man, they're legends, and one of those legends live right in Alexis First Nation. So she wouldn't even be that hard to get over here, I bet. But that would want actual inclusion. And this matters to me because my daughter, she's playing Dungeons and Dragons right now, and Dungeons and Dragons have done a really good job of trying to be more inclusive and not having negative connotations associated with races anymore. And just really, all the stories are about colonialism. Only the thing is that if you're white and a settler in Canada or the US, you don't see yourself as the bad guy, right? But that's what it is. Anyway, really hope that I can ask my listeners to like take a critical look at the things that you like around you and see, are there land acknowledgements? I was door knocking for Marilyn North Pagan is running in Calgary Klein for the NDP, and one of my good friends, the person who does the Settler Book Club. So if you're a settler anywhere across North America and you want to be in a book club trying to unpack racism and settler colonialism, and you're not a part of my book club, be a part of her book club. Really wonderful woman. Anyway, she has like literally a land acknowledgement right in her window. And she does that so that folks like me, when I go to door knock her house, feel wonderful and comfortable. And I just don't know why average Joe Canadian can't see the role in this, but it's there. And it's at Comic-Con. And I'd really love to see people push for their local Indigenous celebs being at these types of events too, because we're everywhere. And there's no shortage of really cool people to get to these. Anyway, so something else I wanted to bring up was that today's May 1st, but May 5th is Red Dress Day. So if you don't have events happening in your area, which likely you do, you just don't know where to look, and likely you probably are like, oh my God, I'm so good, I can't possibly be on Facebook. And guess where it is? It's on Facebook. So a lot of Indigenous people use Facebook to do a lot of that organizing. So look there, look to see. And for folks who are like, well, you can't pay me, blah, 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 fine. If you just look on an internet search, you will likely see it, even though you can't maybe necessarily click on all of it, it'll ask you. You can at least see it in your search engine with most of the details there. So highly recommend you go. We're going to have one here. Deb Green is the main organizer for this one here, and Bear Clan is working with her. And I've seen a lot of prep work for, like, you know, red dresses and such being literally stitched and made for the event. So anyway, if you are in a place and you claim you looked, at the very least, you know, maybe wear a red dress, like a small little cutout, and pin it on your top. Or obviously if you're Indigenous, you do it your way. I'll be dressed up and at that event, and I encourage other people to go. There's going to be a few politicians there as well, and so I'll be on my best behavior, even though I will want to punch out in the face a lot of the UCPers that I know will be there. Screw it, even the mayor's going to be there, and I have zero relationship with her at all. And in fact, one of her staffers did an interview with me, and I've yet to hear from her people. So whatever, it is what it is. I don't see politicians doing enough on reconciliation, and they think I'm a bully for telling them that. So again, that's calling me a bully is just home policing, which again, is just people committed to not wanting to really understand reconciliation. So I don't actually take it personally. I just tell my listeners so that they understand, when you, like, I can't possibly bully anyone. We just did our taxes. I make less than 9,000 a year, and I had 2 jobs, you know, and but like, I don't make money because I'm at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. That is the way Canada's designed, so that they can have lots of missing and murdered Indigenous women, so they can feel great about land theft, you know. So these are the reasons why we have to have May 5th, October 4th. It's really important people start to understand the importance of these days and see them as a part of their regular calendar if they're going to be treaty partners here. So let's move on. I'm actually going to share the screen now. So I'm going to try to say it for folks who will never watch it on YouTube, but for folks who can at least watch me on this medium of YouTube, you can see this. Let me share the screen. Oh, and I do have closed captioning now. So if you are a person that prefers to read, maybe you can enjoy my YouTube, but obviously I understand if that's not your cup of tea. It's just I have friends who talk about the amount of people that won't make amends and won't try to include folks with disabilities. I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, can you do this? And I paid for it. I thought I had it set up and it wasn't working. And then I would upload like the script that I have. So if you're on my YouTube, you can probably see my script here. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about next was Authentically Indigenous Craft Store. why am I talking about this? Because I'm actually going to be there. And I know I need to put more effort into coming to these types of events. Again, with home policing, a lot of people are like, oh, I think Michelle's taking a step back, or oh, are you not in Lethbridge anymore? You know, these are the types of things people say to me. And I just kind of laugh because it's like, or is it you just don't want to engage with me or acknowledge me? Whatever, it is what it is. So I'm going to be at this one to do some, live tweeting, live, or not Instagram, TikTok. I'll do TikTok stuff and try to talk about some of the vendors that I see. So what am I talking about? Authentically, Indigenous.com. So, and it's not even Indigenous, it's INDIG.com. You can actually have a look here if you want to see the posters and such. So basically, it's a local grassroots market, and it was developed and created to support local Indigenous arts, culture, and promote community. And that's what I'm here for. I talk about community. I want to see our people who are like urban Indigenous people engage in the community the best they can. And then vice versa. I want to see these so-called allies and the so-called reconciliation time actually support us, right? I say, oh yeah, I guess there's a socioeconomic imbalance, and maybe pay Indigenous people. Anyway, I'm going to get off track here. Let's get back on. Who are our vendors? Indigenous artists, creators, and makers from the Calgary and treaty areas of 7, 6, and 8. What you can find at the sale is handmade goods, crafts, arts, jewelry, beadwork, food, and more. They aim to create opportunities and support local Indigenous creativity, arts, culture, and promote community. Obviously right here, and this is produced, curated by a sister team of Melrin Saloy, Eagle Speaker, and Autumn Eagle Speaker. Now, these are two Blackfoot women who also have, they're also part Black. So they're part Black and Indigenous. So for folks who claim to care about all these things, this is where you should be supporting. And the types of things you can buy here, you can either give away for Mother's Day or maybe buy for honorariums for other people that you might be bringing into your organizations. So anyway, May 6th and 7th, there's a from 5 till 9 on the 6th is the night market. And then on the Saturday from 10 until 3 on May 7th, there's this market. And the theme is honoring our matriarchs. And it's a $5 fee for kids 12 and under, and $8 for a weekend pass. Or sorry, I think I said that wrong. It's $5 fee, period. And kids 12 and under are free. And if you want a weekend pass, it's just $8. And there's free parking because this is at the Kirby Center. And right across the way, there is some free parking. And they even have one of those cool QR codes that I have yet to do, actually. So anyway, I am going to be one of the vendors there. I'm really excited to see some of the other folks. Really important, masks are encouraged. Why is this relevant? Our campaign was just hit. Marilyn Northpagan, her family contracted COVID. There's 4 generations, and the grandmother passed. So, she's sick with COVID, trying to put together funeral. And anyone in the Indigenous community, it's like a weekly occurrence. We're going to funerals, and this, for some reason, is so oblivious to non-Indigenous. They don't understand how COVID is disproportionately affecting us. So please, if you're coming, please don't be a jerk. Just wear your mask. I don't know too many of the vendors that are there for certain, but I do know that Mama Sita, or Yvonne from Bear Clan, she is going to be doing fry bread on May 7th with all the proceeds going to Bear Clan Patrol. So if you're a person who maybe just wants to donate to Bear Clan, this might be a good time just to go over, tell Yvonne what a great job she and that entire team are doing, and pass off some cash if you get an opportunity. And then the other thing that Autumn was telling me about was this wonderful talent show. So it's the first annual that they want to do here. And it's, here, let me click on it and see what comes up. Okay, so it's from 6:30 till 8 p.m. on May 6th. And the final round is May 7th from 1 to 2. So if you're interested in getting to know this is at the Kirby Gym. And there's going to be like, whatever you want. Is it being, silly? Is it, Is it a moose call? Are you just, a great dancer, mime? It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're good at, that's what we want to see. So if you're at all interested, if you have somebody in your life that has a talent, this is where we need to see it. We need to showcase it. And this is the type of stuff I live for. So I hope that people can come, people will enter. And yeah, I hope to see you there. So those are some things I was really excited to tell you about, but there is one other thing that I'm super excited. So unfortunately for the Calgary Public Library, they are very much trying to push everybody in person. And unfortunately for the Indigenous community, that is a very difficult thing for us to be asked to do. And so anyway, my group is wanting to stay on Zoom. I'm absolutely excited about that. But the best part is now people don't have the barrier of a Calgary Public Library card. You never really did. If you would have messaged me, I would have gave you the link regardless of whether or not you had a card. But now we can just go national and not worry about, supporting your local library. I mean, obviously I encourage that because I know books are expensive and, you can't just go buy books all the time. Now, for a lot of us reclaiming, of course we buy our books, and that's like the big expense that we have. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. So book club. May 9th, we're doing the first and second chapter of the National Inquiry, Volume 1A. June 13th, Indian in the Cabinet by Jody Wilson Rainbow. And I did reach out to her and she was just wondering a quick time frame. And I just told her she came out only for 10 minutes. We'd be pretty much over the moon. So maybe she might come. And then, of course, the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women is going to be like rotated, like chunks of it, so we could talk about it and decompress from it. So then on August 8th is Unreconciled by Jesse Wentig, and he said he would come. So that's a confirm. Now, this is a funny one. So October 10th, I reached out to Chief Clarence Louie. He's so funny. He's like that guy. You're like, settle down, uncle. Because he goes, well, you don't have to worry about pronouns or anything with me. And I started laughing and I'm like, yeah, but I'm an Indigenous woman. So, okay, knowing that, I'll be ready. But he's like, he's big on not being politically correct. So this one might be a doozy. And this is your warning. So you might not want to listen to this one if you don't like people not being too PC. Like, I think I'm not PC when I swear or when I just tell it as it is, how I see it. But like, I mean, like, this guy's really not PC. Like, he says the words that I'd be like, nobody should say those words. But, for me, I just want to say this. So my dad got me this book for Christmas. And even for people that I'm like, ugh, they are so oppressive in their language. They don't understand racism, blah, blah, blah. Even with those, I still read them and I try to make space for them because to me, the only book that sucks is one that you don't take away something good from it. And from my point of view, my dad gave me this book. So for me, it's already a good thing. But here, this is the title. My indictment of Canada and America's systemic racism against Indigenous people. This guy may not be politically correct like Senator Patrick Brazeau, but we're still on the same team. We're still on the same side. And he's still like, whether like not by blood, but I consider him my cousin or my uncle. And so anyway, I'll just give a quick idea because they're out in BC. Their rules are a little different than the Indian Act one that I understand. Anyway, he very much is like a modern economy type person. Who is another one? A good example would be Sutina, the chief. He's really pro-economy as well. A lot of Indigenous nations in Alberta are, pro-oil in order to, have jobs and maybe negotiate a little more extra energy revenues. So it's really smart for our people to do that. But that said, it is hard because we have the Wet'suwet'en right now, and these women are being, brutalized by the RCMP. And really, we need our men to step up to them. Anyway, I'm not trying to get too much off the topic. Anyway, here's some really good, a must read by the Honorable Jody Wilson Rainbow. Peter Mansbridge. We all want to see reconciliation. Chief Louie does too. Here's his plan. a raw and honest perspective on First Nation leadership. A testament to the type of no-nonsense leadership we all long to see more of nowadays. Chris Chelios. What is required is blunt truth, telling like Chief Louis's book, and that's from Cindy Blackstock. So, and we all respect Cindy Blackstock on this podcast. You know, not everybody's going to deliver the truth the way you like it. My listeners like it, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So this book it's going to be a harder one for people who are unlearning oppressiveness, but at the same time, I think it's important to listen to somebody who's been a chief, someone who understands how to manipulate the colonial, laws and rules. And I think it's just really important that everybody, a broad perspective is given on a regular basis. So pretty excited to see if he'll come or not, because I don't know how he felt about how I said that. So anyway, Bruce McIver, there's a really great book about reconciliation called Standoff, and he's confirmed he's coming December 12th. So I wanted to tell everybody that, because the other part is that if you want to unpack the National Inquiry book with us in a, I'm no counselor, but I'd like to think I know a lot more about cultural understanding, how hard these conversations are to talk about. But the other thing is that this is mainly settlers that listen and are part of this book club. So settlers have, questions that might hurt. So anyway, you want to be a part of our book club, I'd love to have you a part of it. nativecalgarian.com. It's always been that way, always will be that way. And now it's just not affiliated with anybody. It's just mine. So I hope you consider coming. The Reconciliation Action Group, we had some really good momentum with a few articles on John A. Macdonald is a high school here in Calgary. And obviously, nationally, we're trying to get these changes made. And, the Calgary Board of Education, these are the same folks that refused to change Langevin, even after the Prime Minister had changed Langevin Block. Mayor Nenshi had changed Langevin Bridge to Reconciliation Bridge. And we had been pushing for them to change Langevin School for decades, because it wasn't just me that started this a long time ago. Like even before 2013, Larry Leach was running for school board and talking about these things. So this has been a long time coming to get that one school done. So you can imagine the barriers we're facing with John A. Macdonald. And so anyway, we've got a couple of good news articles. We did share them. I didn't see a lot of shares of it, so I'm hoping people at least read them. I want to give a shout out to Professor Sean Carlton, because he has wrote about John A. Macdonald being problematic in the past, and our group reached out to him, and he wrote yet another letter to the CBE along with some other professors to ask them to be like, are you sure you want your legacy to be under this? So there was a public meeting. Unfortunately, I don't know any of the outcome of it because I haven't made time for that, because contrary to proper belief, I'm actually quite busy. I just not paid for it all, but that's not true. I've been getting some honorariums. So for folks who would like to have me speak, or for some of the community work I do, I am starting to get some payment, which I appreciate. Anyway, but for Reconciliation Action Group, like this is for open to anyone. Reconciliation is way bigger than what I'm saying. It's way bigger than just what Chief Louis says. It's so much bigger. Like thousands of Indian residential school survivors said, this is the problem, here are the solutions. Everybody has a role to play in some of that, whether it's a small bit, whether it's a big bit. So anyway, every city should have some sort of reconciliation group that's doing that work. And we have the Reconciliation Action Group. So again, if you want to learn more about that and you don't know how, just contact me. We'll get you in the know. And if you don't have one locally, consider starting one. Maybe it's a book club. And honestly, our Reconciliation Action Group started as a book club. And it was people who were motivated to do more, right? And now folks who were part of my original book club are now donating or part of the campaign for Maryland North again, right? So these are the things that we can do. We can support good Indigenous candidates in the upcoming elections. And speaking of which, now you're seeing this wrong on here, so I'm just going to change over to here. So a friend of mine, well, a person I've been lucky enough to know and call a friend is Naomi Sayers. Many of you know her. She's a lawyer out at the Sault Ste. Marie area. And I wanted to give everybody an update because I said, hey, if you live out and I know half of my listeners are from Ontario, but if you live out in the Sault Ste. Marie riding, she is running independent now. So it turned out, and I'll just read it for what she says here on her website as an update. Some of you know I was seeking nomination to stand as the Ontario Liberal Party candidate for the Sault Ste. Marie riding. The party has told me with notice as of Thursday at about 3:30 that they will not continue the vetting process. I don't want to focus on what is in the past and can't be changed. I want to focus on the future. This is my update on my intentions to be an independent candidate. So, folks, if you are in that riding, please go to her website, have a look. She has it very laid out here about the issues that she wants to talk about and how to get involved, the deadlines that are coming up, some things that really matter to her the most that she wants to talk about. So there's no excuse. If you live out in Sault Ste. Marie riding, please, I'm asking you, support her, endorse her, volunteer for her, donate to her at the very minimum, and bloody hell vote for her if you're in her area. So these were things I wanted to bring up today, and I thank you for listening to me every single day. I'm shocked when I see some of the numbers that I get. So I'm going to stop this video, and I hope that folks who are listening can see what I was seeing, the importance of what I'm doing. So, oh, and now my video is right off. Okay. All right. Finally got this figured back out. 4 years, folks. And here I am still trying to figure out Zoom properly. Anyway. All right. So those were the things I really want to bring up today was the book club, the Reconciliation Action Group, Naomi and Sault Ste. Marie, Red Dress Day, and maybe a little thoughts about my ideas on Comic-Con. Anyway, I'm proud that this podcast has given solutions and included cultural safety training or cultural first aid in all of them to create a safer space for Indigenous people of color, those with disabilities, and LGBTQ2+ to speak. Oh, that was one other thing I should have brought up was that finally there's been some changes in Canada over the stupid banning of blood for gay men. So there's obviously some criticism too. I can't remember what it is offhand, but I'll have to look at it as we start getting into policy here. But thank God there's been some freaking change there. My understanding for folks who want to know more about that is that there wasn't the science to prove it. So anyway, there was funding, science to prove it. Now it's finally done. So, so stupid. Anyway, if you're interested in learning more about the gay blood ban, it's going to be a negative part of our history, and I hope we never forget it. But obviously, as you can see what's happening in Ontario, so I actually just found out today, there's two like way fringe, right wing type groups. One that Derek Sloan is leading, and a new one called the New Blue. And I'm just sad because we're not even getting reconciliation into the curriculum because folks are too busy, I don't know, doing whatever they're doing. So these folks are getting actual like airtime. I can't even believe it. So my hope is that we have enough blue teams in Ontario that we split the vote enough that we lose this ridiculousness that is Doug Ford. But never underestimate people. You know, if the blue team does their work and gets their peoples out to the polls, they win. That's why every single Canadian needs to see their role in being a part of a different solution if you want something more progressive. Anyway, I want to say thank you to Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Friedkin of heretohelp.bc.ca for a great piece on what is Indigenous safety culture. our cultural safety, and why should I care about it? I just looked through it again today to make sure that it was still there, but there's just such great reminders. And there's so many resources now about being an ally to Indigenous people. Anyway, their work and those cultural action tools, I've said in my podcast. So support Indigenous work like that as part of your reconciliation work, settler understanding, and unlearning some of the white supremacy that you were taught in this societal construct. I'm just lucky enough to highlight and repeat them here. So for folks of us who are maybe new immigrants, maybe you're Indigenous, maybe you're a person of color, or maybe you're LGBTQ2+, or maybe you have a disability, internalized oppression dynamics is a part of who we are, and we have to work hard to unlearn them and to not internalize that hate. So sometimes we call it internalized racism or lateral violence, but anyway, this is another form of violence that marginalized folks experience. So if you go to racialequitytools.org, there's some really great resources there. One that I really like is by Donna Bevins about what is internalized racism. And it really talks about those oppression dynamics. So it may say Black woman, and I just want you to consider, like, if you have a disability, consider people with disabilities. If you're LGBTQ2+, consider it that word. If you're Indigenous, that word, to try to unpack some of the white supremacy you've been taught. White supremacist, ableist, homophobic type of, unpacking that and realizing oppressive language. Also, do's and don'ts for bystander intervention by American Friends Service Committee. They have a great, do's and don'ts of how to intervene when you see somebody being attacked. And when I say attacked, I don't always mean, like somebody beating someone up. Although I do have to say, I did call out someone this week who apparently is part of my contacts, because TikTok told me that you were a part of my contacts. And he posted a stupid video of Indigenous women fighting on the sea train, and you labeled it drunk as fuck. And I thought, you motherfucker, how dare you follow me and not understand intergenerational trauma, not understand displacement of Indigenous people, and post something like that. What you did was you outed yourself as a racist and did everything the opposite of what I tell you to do here by going to do's and don'ts bystander intervention. So whoever you are, I sure hope you block me. I sure hope we never cross paths, because you cannot reconcile this. You can't post pictures of marginalized people, put them up on the internet, and then use that as some kind of trauma porn for yourself. I don't know what you're doing with it, but what it did, and I read the comments, it was just a whole bunch of white people being like, yeah, that's the way it is here. I hate Calgary. And it's like, you are literally the problem. And it wasn't just white people, it was immigrants and such as well. Like, you watch the videos, just like, other like people of color on the sea train who are obviously newer immigrants or refugees, etc. And they're all just like, I'm not intervening. And I get that, but you contributed to it because a lot of you are still laughing. And thanks a lot, folks. This is the type of racism that we face here. And for folks who actually care and actually have hearts and empathy, compassion, and understanding as to what we're dealing with, you can go to the American Friends Service Committee at afsc.org and go to those do's and don'ts bystander intervention. Also, I'm proud to be a member of acttoendracism.ca. And if you experience any racism or see it here in Calgary, like all of those people that were on that stupid TikTok, easily could have instead texted acttoendracism.ca, that moron who put it up there. And I said ableist languages. Anyway, I downloaded the video. I'm literally going to send it to these folks and be like, this is the type of racism I, as an Indigenous woman, can't even go on to freaking TikTok without seeing. Because here's the thing, and this is part of my now human rights complaint going up against the pharmacists. You don't see us as people. And that's the problem. Had anybody intervened, like, these are two women who were hardly capable of standing, and they weren't hurting anybody, but the comments are like, oh, well, nobody wants to get hurt. And it's like, come on, you guys, you don't see us as people. That's what it is. So anyway, Indigenous has been talking about our issues, sharing our traumas and reports, commissions, and public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. No more. Honor our words, honor the treaties. Listen to politicians and their platforms and their policies. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they are cutting violence prevention programs and services, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay straight alliances, lack of human rights for migrants, immigrants, folks with disabilities, know that your vote to that party is directly negatively impacting marginalized people. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform, violence prevention, and now 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit. Denying those reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in the educational, justice, and health institutions with multiple reports that say the same thing. Demand change from election platforms, politicians, institutions, comic cons. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they have zero business running or doing public events. It should be understood by all parties, local politicians, community organizations, sports, clubs, anything. You know, a really great article that's out there is Truth Before Truth, how non-Indigenous Canadians become allies. That's still up there. There's many really great articles out there. If you're experiencing emotional distress after anything we talked about today and want to talk, you can call the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness Helpline at 1-855-242-3310. It's 24/7, open 24 hours a day. You can also, if you go onto their website, hopeforwellness.ca, they have a text option as well. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, you can also call 844-413-6649. It is a national toll-free crisis call line for anyone. For non-Indigenous, there are distress center lines in your area and a functioning 211, or call 833-456-4566. And a really great resource for Indigenous in Alberta is the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta. So if you go to ssisa.ca, you can see a lot of their great work that they're doing. And again, I'll just do a plug for Act to End Racism. So LGBTQ2 plus crisis supports. The Trevor Project has all the supports. The Canadian version of that is lifevoice.ca. This is important because the conservative right-wing media are actually attacking the Trevor Project for creating, safety plans and such for LGBTQ2 plus youth, trans, everybody. So folks, you really have to decide which side of history you're on, and you have to start working at this, because I don't want to see another person who's LGBTQ2 plus suffer in any capacity. I don't want them experiencing racism, discrimination. I know what it's like. Anyway, violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. That's why I started this podcast, to speak freely without interruption, tone police, leadership shaming, gaslighting, questions, as many people don't want to hear Indigenous thoughts and opinions, but sure want to tell us theirs, even though they've never lived as an Indigenous person, know nothing about colonialism, worse, are in denial of it. They don't know about the constant surveillance of Indigenous people, our protests, our vigils, and our rights. Microaggressions, people dealing with internalized racism, gatekeepers, are there enough of those? Folks who live off the status quo, people who are in their trauma. Internal and external racism is an everyday reality for Indigenous people in Canada. That's why I needed this podcast. Thank you to my ancestors, my granny, my mom, of what strength looks like through your examples. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family and roots, and stepping up and teaching me how to be a proud Calgarian. It is through her I'm a second generation proud Calgarian. I highly recommend, if you're non-Indigenous, to not call yourself a native Calgarian. I want to say thank you to Darcy for producing and editing the show, on top of being my husband, my childhood friend, the father of our child, the support down my journey of the Red Road. He has witnessed decades of racism and sexism. And to our child, who we are blessed to learn from daily, we are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. My hope is that my daughter will be proud of us trying to discuss these issues in a way that they can understand. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or your questions. And I also have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And I always want to end. So again, for folks who don't understand, when I did my intro and I said I'm part of the hair people, I'm talking about rabbits. So I always end every single one of my shows, and I caught people on my social media who don't listen, didn't catch my joke. Anyway, there was Crackmax had shared these bunnies just being erratic, and they were like, "What's going on here?" And I laughed, and I was like, "Oh, they're lucky I'm not tradish." So every single podcast I end this with saying, I want to give side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish. And my beautiful cousin responded, or you'd be in my dish. Thank you for listening, folks.